Welcome to Quantum Mind Hub Stories. Before we dive in, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with friends. Remember to drop your thoughts, perspectives, and lessons learned in the comment section. Alright, get comfy. Let's get started. Elena Ramirez had spent the last 12 long years of her life sweeping the gleaming marble floors and scrubbing away stains in the vast, opulent lobby of Ocean Crest Hotel, a glamorous landmark in the heart of Miami. Every night, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the city's neon glow ignited a pulse of restless energy, she slipped quietly into the shadows where the hotel's secrets hid. Though her uniform bore the faded blue of a janitor's garb and her hands showed signs of ceaseless toil, there was an unspoken dignity in her measured steps and attentive gaze. Every speck of dirt and every discarded scrap told its own story, a silent record of whispered conversations, personal dramas, and whispered ambitions. In the midst of high-profile guests and glossy magazine features, no one ever considered that Elena might carry a burden far deeper than the grease and grime of her nightly routine. Her eyes, however, absorbed every detail with a keen sense of justice. In that quiet vigil, as she scrubbed floors and mopped corridors under the indifferent watch of luxury, Elena silently observed the inequities unfolding around her. Unbeknownst to everyone, beneath the humble exterior lived a burning resolve and a secret too explosive to be contained. With every sweep of her mop and every cleansing gesture, she gathered evidence from a world where power and influence trampled dignity, and she dreamed of one day reclaiming the respect long denied to her. For hidden away in a battered, inconspicuous folder, tucked under her bed in a cramped apartment, was a secret legacy that would shatter the carefully constructed illusion of power at Ocean Crest. Every night, as she toiled with a quiet determination, the weight of that secret merged with the echo of her heavy footsteps, a soft, steady heartbeat promising that one day, the truth would demand to be seen and the call for justice would roar like the Miami tide against the shore. Bryce Dalton was the polished face of Ocean Crest Hotel's management, a man whose charisma for guests masked a ruthless nature behind closed doors. By day, he strutted through the lobby with a smile that sparkled like the hotel's chandeliers, a picture of polished professionalism. But when the staff gathered in quiet corners away from the gleaming lights, they spoke in hushed, bitter tones about his cruelty. Bryce's methods were unyielding and uncompromising, dismissing employees with a snap of his fingers and cutting corners without a second thought. His laughter, cold and calculating, resonated through the corridors whenever he ridiculed those he deemed beneath him. Even the most dignified gestures, like the clink of silverware or the soft murmur of polite conversation among guests, would turn to whispers when his presence was near. Every time Elena crossed his path, Bryce's sneer would betray a vicious delight in her quiet subservience. One bitter evening, as he carelessly dumped a tray of expensive wine on the marble floor, an act so incongruent with his public persona, it was Elena who was forced to attend to the mess, her gentle voice swallowed up by his booming insults calling her the help in front of the assembled guests. The humiliation was complete, the moment seared into the memory of everyone present. Yet, even as his laughter echoed like a macabre soundtrack to his cruelty, little did Bryce realize that his unbridled arrogance would soon sow the seeds of his downfall. Every condescending remark he uttered masked an insecurity, a vulnerability he refused to acknowledge, but one that was being documented in secret by the eyes that watched him every day. There was an undercurrent of bitter irony in the way his polished image clashed with the grime of his actions, a stark testament to a man who thought himself untouchable yet remained oblivious to the storm gathering quietly in the background. Behind the veneer of endless nights cleaning stained floors and collecting stray fragments of forgotten conversations, Elena nurtured a secret that had long been carefully locked away. A secret that was destined to upend the carefully constructed order of Ocean Crest Hotel. Every night, after the final guest's departure and the echo of laughter faded into the silence of a neglected corridor, Elena's heart pounded with quiet anticipation. In the solitude of her tiny, cluttered apartment, amid stacks of peeling paperwork and dim streetlight filtering through curtained windows, she would retrieve a battered folder. Its yellowed pages and frayed edges contained legal documents that proved her ownership of 60% of the very empire she had long served in obscurity. The papers, inherited from her estranged grandfather, a man shrouded in mystery and unspoken promises, spoke of a destiny that would challenge the status quo. Elena felt the sting of betrayal each time Bryce's cruel words echoed in her memory, each humiliation at his hands a reminder that power could be cloaked in the guise of mediocrity. While the world saw her as a mere caretaker of floors and forgotten corners, she harbored the potential to seize back a stolen legacy. And so, in the silence of forgotten nights, as the city outside whispered stories of ambition and despair, Elena resolved that one day she would let the hidden truth break free. It was a pledge formed in the depths of her weary soul, a vow to reclaim not only her rightful share but also the dignity that had been stripped away piece by the arrogance of those in power. In every scratch on the floor and each discarded scrap of evidence, her determination grew, fueled by a longing for justice that could no longer be contained. Every piece of evidence Elena gathered over the years was a testament to the injustice that had long persisted within the walls of Ocean Crest Hotel. With a keen sense of observation honed by years of being invisible, she started to accumulate the discarded remnants of Bryce's misdeeds. On nights when the corridors were empty and the hum of the city outside seemed distant, she would stealthily collect crumpled emails from Bryce's office, stray documents tossed away carelessly, and even witness-recorded footage from hidden cameras that captured moments of humiliation. Each piece, no matter how insignificant it appeared, was meticulously stored away in her secret folder beneath her bed, a treasure trove of damning evidence. As Elena scrubbed the stained corners of the lobby or mopped the sweat and secrets off the floors, she connected the dots silently. In her heart, the rejection, the daily slighting, and the constant belittling by Bryce fused together with the legacy of her grandfather, creating a quiet storm of resolve. She began to realize that every taunt he hurled, every whispered comment about the help, was not just an echo of his vanity but a cry for justice from the souls of the oppressed. The small gestures of human dignity she granted herself were a stark contrast to the glittering facade Bryce maintained. In the depth of each midnight cleaning shift, Elena's determination to expose the truth solidified, fueled by the knowledge that every act of cruelty accumulated like the dust on the forgotten corners of the hotel. Now, armed with irrefutable evidence, she harbored the audacity to rewrite the narrative of her life, a narrative where power was restored to the overlooked and the underdog would rise with an unstoppable force that none could ignore. Bryce's grand plans to profit from the hotel's hidden treasures and exploit its legacy were unfolding behind closed doors, unnoticed by the ones who truly understood its true value. Little did he know that every conversation he thought was confidential was, in fact, being overheard by the very person he had made invisible. Elena's growing collection of documents, shredded reports, trashed memos, and discarded emails painted a damning picture of his underhanded tactics and shady dealings. In the midst of a bustling Miami evening, as neon lights bled into the dark canvases of the alleyways, Elena's careful ears picked up hushed murmurs from Bryce's private office. On a cool night after a particularly intense day filled with humiliating encounters, she lingered near the staff break room. Through a slightly ajar door, she caught a furtive phone conversation. Bryce's words, laced with greed and disregard, revealed his plan to sell off part of the hotel to a dubious real estate developer, pocketing a consulting fee that he would never admit was stolen from the company's coffers. The revelation was like a strike of lightning to Elena's heart, each word a spark that ignited the dormant flames of rebellion within her. In that charged moment of clarity, she resolved that the days of silent suffering were numbered. Every minute detail of Bryce's negotiation was stored away in her memory, reinforcing the notion that her unassuming role was nothing more than a carefully cultivated disguise. The clock ticked on relentlessly, echoing the inevitability of change. With every fiber of her being, she knew that the truth was powerful, too powerful to be suppressed. What began as a personal vigil against mistreatment was now morphing into a full-blown crusade against exploitation, a rebellion set to dismantle a corrupt regime, piece by piece. In the dim light of her modest apartment, Elena reviewed her collection of damning evidence while a storm raged outside, its wind echoing the turmoil within her soul. The city's relentless pace was mirrored by her racing thoughts as she sat cross-legged on her creaking floor, pondering the magnitude of the injustices she had silently borne for over a decade. Each document in her secret folder was a ticking clock, counting down to the moment when justice would finally come knocking on the imposing, silver doors of Ocean Crest Hotel. Elena's memories of Bryce's incessant mockery, the way he sneered, the cold remark that left her humiliated in the eyes of her colleagues, intertwined with the soft hum of the city outside. Every scar on her weary spirit was a call for retribution, and every piece of evidence was a reminder that one day, the truth would shatter the oppressive silence. Her delicate hands trembled, not from fear, but from a growing fervor to reclaim what was rightfully hers. In that space between despair and determination, Elena became resolute in her mission, to expose Bryce's unscrupulous practices to everyone who had ever been duped by his polished veneer. The documents detailed transactions designed to defraud not only the hotel's investors, but also the hard-working employees who had trusted him implicitly. In a battle where arrogance was the weapon of the powerful, Elena's quiet resolve was the hidden spark capable of igniting a revolution. The plan was not without risks, yet every risk was a necessary step toward dismantling a corrupt system. As the thunder rolled overhead, she whispered promises to herself. Promises that one day, the indignities that had defined her existence would be swept away, just like the dirt on the hotel floors, leaving behind a legacy of unyielding strength and undeniable truth. The turning point came unexpectedly when a trusted friend from years past entered Elena's quiet world. Marcus, a sharp, unapologetic lawyer known for his relentless pursuit of justice and a soft spot for those sidelined by society. Their reunion was as unceremonious as it was fortuitous. Meeting in a small, cluttered cafe in a busy Miami neighborhood, Marcus's eyes widened with a mix of shock and admiration as he listened to Elena's measured recount of her silent suffering and relentless collection of proof. "It's time to take it back," she whispered, her voice steady but resolute, laden with the weight of years spent hidden in the shadows. Marcus leaned in, his expression hardening with every word. He knew that behind the veneer of the hotel's slick presentation lurked layers of deception and betrayal that had silently festered for far too long. In that crowded space filled with the aroma of roasted coffee beans and the murmur of casual chatter, Marcus's understanding grew. He would be her advocate, the force to counterbalance the tyranny of Bryce. The pact they forged that day was unspoken yet powerful, a commitment sealed by shared glances and the palpable determination that radiated from Elena's gaze. Marcus, with his sharp suit and sharper intellect, began to map out a strategy to dismantle Bryce's empire from within, layer by careful layer. In every legal clause and financial ledger, he saw the evidence of exploitation, a blueprint of corruption that could not be allowed to stand. Their partnership was the merging of past resentments and future hopes, a calculated rebellion against the status quo. The cafe became their initial war room where whispered plans began to take solid form, promising that the moment of reckoning was imminent and that the silence that had defined Elena's nights was about to break, revealing the thunderous roar of justice. Over the next few weeks, every spare moment Elena and Marcus spent together was dedicated to meticulously piecing together an airtight case against Bryce. They combed through financial records, reconstructing every shady transaction and hidden clause that revealed how Bryce had manipulated the hotel's accounts to funnel money into his secret pockets. In a dimly lit back room of a local community center, surrounded by the dust of forgotten files and the persistent hum of old fans, they pored over hours of surveillance footage and critical documents that had once been dismissed as bureaucratic clutter. The process was grueling, testing both Elena's emotional resilience and Marcus's legal acumen. But as the details piled up, so did their determination. Each late-night session was punctuated by frustrated sighs and moments of quiet victory when a particularly incriminating piece of evidence surfaced. Their conversations oscillated between technical legal strategies and raw, emotional declarations of purpose. "We're not just fighting for me," Elena would say, her voice trembling yet unwavering. "We're fighting for every person who's ever been oppressed, overlooked, or silenced by people like him." With every document authenticated and every suspicious signature cross-checked, their case became more than a personal vendetta. It transformed into a righteous crusade for justice. In their shared determination, the dusty papers and flickering screens of the community center became an arena where a powerful statement was being forged, one that would soon echo throughout the corridors of power at Ocean Crest Hotel and beyond. One fateful evening, as twilight draped the Miami skyline in hues of purple and gold, Elena found herself unexpectedly cornered in the hotel's administrative wing. The atmosphere was thick with tension and hushed murmurs as Bryce strode in with a smug, dismissive air, a familiar posture of superiority that Elena had endured far too long. His gaze, cold and dismissive, scanned the dim room and landed on Elena with a sneer that made her skin crawl. "So, you're still haunting these halls, aren't you?" he barked, his tone laced with the cruelty that had defined their long history. The words fell like a gavel of judgment, echoing through the empty space and stirring old memories of humiliation. But Elena, battered by years of quiet endurance, now harbored a silent storm behind those gentle eyes. A small, knowing smile tugged at the corners of her lips, a smile that spoke not of submission but of a promise of retribution. In that brief, electrifying moment, the dynamics shifted imperceptibly. Bryce's mockery, intended to belittle her, instead fanned the flames of her defiance. The room, usually a stage for his daily theatrics, became a crucible where every slight, every tearful injustice of years gone by was suddenly charged with the power of a long-dormant resolve. Elena's mind raced with memories of each humiliating episode, the spilled wine incident, the sneers, and the staff's indifferent laughter, a litany of abuse that, when recalled, forged her into something unstoppable. As he dismissed her with a wave of his hand, confident in his dominion, she silently vowed that this time there would be no retreat, no quiet resignation. What had once been painful submission was now transmuting into a calculated, righteous fury, a force that would soon turn the tables on the man who had thought himself untouchable. Every word he uttered was stored away, each insult reforged into evidence, and every hostile glance became fuel for the impending revolution. The night of the long-awaited board meeting arrived with a palpable air of suspense that gripped everyone connected to Ocean Crest Hotel. In the days leading up to that fateful evening, Marcus and Elena had worked tirelessly, weaving together a tapestry of indisputable evidence that would upend the precarious status quo. Behind polished conference tables and the pretense of upscale elegance, the board members had been lulled into a false sense of security by Bryce's smooth-talking assurances. But as the meeting began, a subtle tension vibrated in the air, a sense that something monumental was on the horizon. Elena, dressed in the identical uniform of the janitorial staff, a symbol of her unacknowledged strength, stepped into the opulent boardroom. Heads turned and murmurs rippled through the room like a sudden gust of wind. The board members exchanged puzzled looks, wondering why the humble caretaker had chosen this moment to make her presence known. The silence that enveloped the room was profound, each tick of the clock heightening the suspense. With the dignity of someone who had endured years of whispers and derision, she slowly unlatched her worn leather bag and pulled out the battered folder that held the key to her destiny. In that charged moment, every eye in the room shifted towards the folder as if it were a beacon of truth cutting through the murk of deceit. The air seemed to crackle with anticipation, for here was a moment when every unheard voice was finally going to be amplified, every injustice illuminated. The promise of retribution was almost tangible, an unyielding force that was set to redefine the very notion of power and integrity in a place where appearances had masked corruption for too long. As the board meeting commenced in the elegant yet stifling chamber of the Ocean Crest Hotel's inner sanctum, the atmosphere transformed from one of smug complacency to restless agitation. Bryce Dalton had spent months orchestrating a polished pitch, confident that his reputation and corporate assurances would silence any dissent. He had rehearsed every line, every gesture designed to impress the board's rigid expectations. Yet, beneath his well-practiced exterior, a quiet unease began to ripple through the room as murmurs of anticipation grew. The board members, accustomed to polished presentations and slick marketing lingo, found themselves caught off guard by the silent persistence of a figure they'd long dismissed, a figure they believed was nothing more than an inconsequential janitor. Elena entered the room not with bluster or spectacle, but with the calm, measured steps of someone who had weathered years of ridicule and exploitation. Dressed in her standard uniform, she was a stark contrast to the manicured suits of Bryce and the board. As she moved toward the central table, the chatter died down, replaced by an almost tangible tension. Every heart in the room pulsed with an unspoken question. What was she doing here? The answer was about to shatter not just the hushed norms of polite society, but the deeply entrenched power dynamics that had allowed a man like Bryce to run rampant. With a determined glint in her eye, Elena placed her battered folder on the table with deliberate force. It wasn't just a folder. It was a manifesto of truth, a chronicle of the years of exploitation, and a damning record of every act of injustice perpetrated by Bryce. In that defining moment, the room teetered on the edge of chaos, an echo of the imminent upheaval that would soon reclaim the dignity of every overlooked soul within those opulent walls. As Bryce's presentation faltered against the weight of Elena's silent protest, an electric tension surged through the boardroom, making every heartbeat a silent drum of impending change. With a mix of disbelief and indignation, Bryce attempted to dismiss her presence as a mere interruption, a trivial disruption to his meticulously crafted narrative of progress and modernization. But the atmosphere had already shifted. The board members, who had once nodded at his slick promises, now exchanged uneasy glances. Their eyes grew sharper, curiosity turning into suspicion, and a slow dawning realization that perhaps things were not as they seemed. Elena maintained her unyielding gaze, her presence speaking volumes louder than any polished speech could. Her calm, steady demeanor was a challenge, a direct confrontation of the power dynamics that had suppressed voices like hers for so long. With each passing second, the silence in the room grew more deafening, as if everyone was holding their breath in anticipation of the truth. Her measured steps to the head of the table sent a ripple of shock throughout the room. Even as Bryce sputtered for words, trying to regain control of the situation, Elena's resolute expression told a story of long-endured suffering and a promise of retribution. In that silent moment, every slight, every smear of her character, and every dismissive remark made over the years converged into a single, undeniable truth: the janitor was not merely a background figure in their grand narrative. Elena's presence was a declaration that power had a new custodian, one who had borne the weight of injustice long enough and was now ready to dismantle the corrupt hierarchy that Bryce had so arrogantly established. The moment of truth came when, with deliberate calm, Elena slowly reached into her worn leather bag and extracted the bundle of incriminating documents that had grown into a full-fledged arsenal of justice. The boardroom, once under Bryce's domineering influence, now buzzed with restless anticipation as she spread the evidence, carefully organized and indisputable, across the polished mahogany table. Each page bore the unmistakable mark of negligence and deceit, a trail of missed ethics, financial improprieties, and personal vendettas carefully masked behind the veneer of corporate progress. "I'm not just the janitor," she said in a steady, clear voice that cut through the stifling tension. "I am the rightful owner, and I'm reclaiming what has always been mine." Her words reverberated off the walls, carrying the weight of 12 years of silent endurance, every humiliation transforming into a rallying cry for change. The board members leaned forward, their faces an evolving mix of shock, anger, and reluctant respect as they absorbed the truth laid bare before them. In that charged moment, the carefully constructed facade of Bryce's leadership began to crumble. The damning emails, the hidden financial ledgers, and the internal communications, each piece a shard of evidence against his regime, formed an irrefutable case that no amount of polished rhetoric could obscure. Elena's revelation was not just a personal vindication. It was a decisive moment that would alter the balance of power at Ocean Crest Hotel forever. With every eye fixed on her, the boardroom transformed into a stage where every whispered rumor and every secret long concealed was about to see the light of day. The truth, raw and undeniable, was now inescapable. As the board members deliberated, their once composed faces betraying emotions of deep-seated betrayal and shock, the evidence that Elena had so painstakingly collected cast an irreparable shadow over Bryce's legacy. His confident veneer had crumbled, replaced by the dawning realization that the very foundations of his authority were built on lies and exploitation. A heavy silence enveloped the room as Marcus, who had been quietly backing Elena every step of the way, stepped forward to further cement the case with legal precision. "We have documented every act of misconduct," he stated firmly, his voice echoing authority and ethical obligation. The legal proofs that he presented, coupled with Elena's testimony, resonated powerfully with the board, each verified document becoming a brick in the wall dismantling Bryce's reign of terror. Some board members murmured their outrage, others shared shocked glances as they reconciled their previous trust in a man they believed to be infallible. Elena's declaration, her unwavering eye contact, and the undeniable presentation of facts painted a portrait of a system that had been deeply flawed, a system in desperate need of radical change. In that pivotal moment, every silent cry for justice from the hotel's overlooked corridors found its voice. It was as if the very air in the room vibrated with the energy of overdue reckoning, a force that could not be silenced by mere apology or feeble denials. The collective consciousness of the board shifted, propelling them into a decision that would echo far beyond the confines of that room. Elena's quiet yet commanding presence had transformed the boardroom into a crucible for true accountability. In doing so, she ensured that the legacy of every unrecognized worker, every suppressed cry of injustice, would no longer be ignored. With the room now saturated with the undeniable evidence and the palpable energy of impending justice, the mood shifted irreversibly as the board prepared for the final, decisive vote. In the days leading up to this moment, murmurs of discontent had grown louder within the hallowed halls of Ocean Crest Hotel's leadership, and now there was no turning back from the course they had set. The vote was more than a procedural formality, it was a symbolic reckoning for every wrong that had festered under Bryce's watch. One by one, the board members cast their votes, their expressions a silent affirmation that the balance of power had irrevocably tipped in favor of the truth. Elena sat quietly in a chair, her posture unassuming yet exuding an inner strength that resonated with every witness in the room. The final tally was a resounding endorsement of retribution, a statement that the voices of the oppressed would no longer be drowned out by the hollow promises of the powerful. When the final vote was announced, it was clear that the decision had far surpassed mere corporate restructuring. It was a powerful repudiation of systemic injustice and a mandate for transparency. In that charged moment, the room erupted in a mix of relief, outrage, and hopeful determination. The evidence had spoken with such clarity that Bryce's future was sealed, his authority had been irrevocably delegitimized by the very facts he had tried to conceal. A collective murmur of approval swelled through the room, a promise that the new regime would correct decades of mismanagement and neglect. The vote was not just a legal formality but the declaration of a new era. A revolution built on the foundation of truth, accountability, and the unyielding belief that justice for the voiceless was inevitable. As the final vote was confirmed and its implications rippled through the grand boardroom, the ultimate moment of retribution arrived with undeniable finality. With a calm that belied the storm of emotions swirling around the room, Elena stood and faced Bryce with a quiet, unassailable resolve. Her eyes shone with a mix of determination and sorrow, a testament to the years of silent suffering and unrecognized dedication that had brought her to this singular moment. "Bryce," she announced in a tone both gentle and scornful, "you're fired." The words hung in the air, slicing through the pretense of power with an electrifying precision. For a fleeting moment, time seemed to stand still as Bryce's face transformed, a mask of arrogance replaced by shock and disbelief, his carefully constructed persona crumbling with every syllable. The board watched, rapt and rapturous, as the man who had once commanded absolute authority now stood deflated before the woman he had so arrogantly demeaned. The sound of his shallow, stuttering protest was muffled by the collective weight of his misdeeds, now laid bare for all to see. In that moment, the boardroom was no longer the domain of the powerful, it had become an arena where every act of unbridled cruelty, every moment of suppressed dignity was finally called to account. Elena's declaration was a resounding affirmation that every insult, every public humiliation would be repaid with justice. It was the poetic and violent climax of a long-forgotten struggle, a reckoning that echoed the timeless adage that those who trample on the vulnerable will ultimately be brought to their knees by the very force they sought to suppress. In the stunned silence that followed, the power dynamic was irrevocably altered, marking the end of an era defined by arrogance and the beginning of one illuminated by truth and moral redemption. In the immediate aftermath of Bryce's public dismissal, a palpable shock reverberated through every corner of Ocean Crest Hotel. The corridors, once echoing with his arrogant footsteps, now felt eerily quiet, as if the very building was processing the seismic shift in its foundations. Still reeling from the blow to his pride, Bryce was seen storming down a grand hallway, his face contorted in a mixture of rage and humiliation. His outburst, however, was short-lived. Within minutes, security personnel, now thoroughly aligned with the spirit of accountability that had swept the boardroom, escorted him out of the premises. His desperate, hollering attempts to reclaim a semblance of dignity faded into the background as the hotel's staff and guests began to witness a cathartic closure to years of injustice. Elena watched quietly from the back of the room, every detail of his final tantrum etched in her memory. That moment, filled with the raw, unfiltered expression of a man who had been exposed, was captured by onlookers, and like kindling to a fire, it sparked a frenzy of attention both inside and beyond the hotel's walls. Videos of Bryce's humiliation began circulating on social media, where they exploded into viral notoriety within hours. The outburst that had once been a symbol of his power had become a cautionary spectacle of hubris and cruelty unraveling in real time. Elena's steady, resolute presence served as a counterpoint to the chaos, demonstrating that true authority comes not from fear or intimidation, but from accountability, justice, and a deep commitment to integrity. In that charged moment, the tides had irrevocably turned. The very incident that was meant to expose a supposed weakness in the establishment instead underscored its resilience by finally ridding itself of a man whose reign had been marred by a cavalier disregard for truth and fairness. Within hours of Bryce's public downfall, the digital world erupted in a firestorm of reaction and debate, propelling the janitor-turned-owner story to viral infamy. Social media platforms, from Twitter to TikTok, buzzed with fervent commentary, hashtags trending in unison as people from all walks of life expressed their disbelief and admiration. Memes and reaction videos flooded feeds with humorous yet pointed critiques of Bryce's former bravado, each snippet of his disgrace serving as both a cautionary tale and a rallying cry for justice. Across chat rooms and comment sections, users debated the ethics of unchecked power and celebrated the awakening of a long-silenced truth. The story struck a resonant chord in an era where the underdog's struggle against institutional corruption was a recurring theme, igniting a collective yearning for transparency and fairness in the face of indifference. Meanwhile, traditional media outlets scrambled to cover what had rapidly become one of the most sensational corporate coups of the year. Newspaper headlines and online articles chronicled the staggering reversal of fortunes, from the unseen janitor to the fearless champion of workers' rights, casting Elena as a modern-day folk hero. Yet amid the widespread praise, there remained an undercurrent of tension among those in power. For every retweet and share, there was a hushed acknowledgement that nothing, not even a facade as polished as Bryce's, was immune to the relentless scrutiny of truth. The digital uproar was more than a mere spectacle. It had become a clarion call for accountability in a system long thought impregnable. Elena's transformation was emblematic of a broader awakening, a reminder that every individual, no matter how quietly they live, has the potential to reshape their fate and demand justice for every whispered injustice endured in the shadows. As the digital accolades and public declarations of support swelled, the staff of Ocean Crest Hotel found themselves swept up in a transformative tide of solidarity and renewed optimism. Behind the scenes, in break rooms and quiet corners, long-suppressed grievances blossomed into open discussions of a new era, one where respect and fairness would reign. For years, the employees had endured Bryce's capricious decisions and derisive comments, accepting their lowly positions as an inescapable fate. But now, inspired by Elena's bold step forward and the overwhelming public outcry against abuse, they dared to dream of better days. Shifts that once felt like endless drudgery suddenly resonated with a powerful collective purpose, their long-held sacrifices now seen as the groundwork for a future where everyone's voice mattered. In the common areas of the hotel, whispered plans of reform began to take shape, fueled by a shared promise that the exploitation of the past would no longer be tolerated. A sense of camaraderie blossomed among those who had been forgotten, the housekeepers, bellhops, and maintenance staff, each realizing that their quiet suffering had not been in vain. Their newfound unity, coming to life in informal gatherings and after-shift discussions over steaming cups of coffee, was a testament to the strength of the human spirit. They began to envision a workplace where their contributions would be genuinely appreciated, where fair wages, better conditions, and mutual respect were not just lofty ideals but tangible realities. Elena's emergence from the shadows had lit a spark that threatened to burn away the old, oppressive systems from within, paving the way for a renaissance of dignity and fairness that would ripple through every corridor of the once ominous hotel. In the days that followed the dramatic upheaval as Ocean Crest Hotel's reputation transformed almost overnight, the story of Elena Ramirez rippled beyond the confines of corporate boardrooms and staff break rooms, reaching the wide expanse of the city's bustling streets. Local cafes, community centers, and even public parks hummed with conversation about the dramatic reversal of power, a testament to the indomitable will of someone once deemed invisible. Regular guests who had quietly observed the daily ritual of impeccable service now found themselves drawn into a narrative that was as stirring as it was unexpected. They recalled the fleeting moments of kindness from the humble janitor and began to connect these small gestures with the larger truth that beauty often lies in unexpected places. The transformation of the hotel became a metaphor for the broader, unyielding desire for justice in a world that frequently overlooked the quiet strength of the marginalized. In neighborhood gatherings and family dinners alike, Elena's story was retold as both a parable and a rallying cry, a reminder that every individual, regardless of their station, carries within them the power to reshape the fabric of their reality. The profound change at Ocean Crest was no longer confined to internal restructurings or corporate memos. It had seeped into the city's collective consciousness. Conversations buzzed with the idea that, perhaps, everyone had something vital to contribute, hidden beneath layers of modesty and routine. The hotel's grand transformation became symbolic of a larger social reawakening, a celebration of the inherent worth of every worker, every dreamer, and every quiet soul who dares to defy the established order. Elena's victory echoed far and wide, blending seamlessly into the urban tapestry of resilience and hope as citizens from all walks of life began to reclaim their voices in a world that had long turned a blind eye to the silent struggles of the many. As the days turned into weeks following the tumultuous board meeting and the irreversible fall of Bryce Dalton, Elena delved deeper into the legacy left behind by her enigmatic grandfather. In the solitude of early mornings when the city's pulse was only just beginning to throb against the dim light of dawn, she would retrace the cryptic messages in old letters and dusty ledgers that chronicled a history of resilience and quiet rebellion. In those cherished documents, her grandfather's words resonated, a legacy that he had entrusted to her, cloaked in mystery yet laden with responsibility. With each word scanned and each handwritten note deciphered, she understood more profoundly that her destiny was intertwined with that of Ocean Crest Hotel, not just as an owner, but as a guardian of a heritage steeped in justice and the dignity of labor. The faded ink and delicate script served as both a personal reminder and a clarion call to uphold the ideals that had silently underpinned the hotel's founding. Elena began to see her long hours of cleaning not as a burden of subservience, but as the formative moments where she learned the value of perseverance, humility, and the unyielding pursuit of fairness. Every stain wiped clean, every speck of dust removed was a metaphorical restoration of what had been tarnished by years of neglect and abuse. The weight of legacy, the whispers of her grandfather's admonitions, paired with the palpable spirit of the working class, infused her with a renewed sense of purpose. The hotel, once a symbol of exploitation under Bryce's reign, was now poised to be reborn as an institution where values were cherished more than profits, and where every silent voice was given a space to be heard. In the quiet interludes between the chaos of upheaval and the calm determination of reconstruction, Elena found herself reflecting deeply on the years of anonymity and unseen labor that had defined her life. Every drop of sweat, every long night spent behind mops and buckets had been a chapter in a story of invisibility, a story that, until now, had been written by others without her consent. The very notion that she had worn the guise of a mere janitor while harboring a secret identity felt like a cruel twist of fate. Yet, in that bitter reflection, she also discovered a wellspring of strength. The humiliations that once etched deep scars now served as evidence of her endurance. The silent hardships were the groundwork upon which her eventual triumph was built. Elena recalled the whispered pity from those who believed that someone in her position could never challenge the towering figures of power. And yet, here she stood, armed with evidence, fortified by legacy, and buoyed by the collective hope of every person who had ever been dismissed or overlooked. In the solitude of quiet nights, the city's dist. Ant hum became a comforting reminder that life moves relentlessly forward, offering second chances to those courageous enough to seize them. The reflection was not filled solely with regret, but was tempered by the conviction that her struggle was not in vain. It was a personal triumph over invisibility, a statement to the world that every life, no matter how quietly lived, was imbued with strength, resilience, and the power to redefine destiny. This realization deepened her commitment to forge a future where authenticity and justice were more than mere aspirations. They were non-negotiable truths etched in the very core of every decision she would henceforth make. The unfolding saga of Elena's emergence from the shadows also ignited a transformation in how the hotel's guests perceived their own experiences. Long accustomed to the impeccable service packaged in shiny uniforms and polite smiles, they began to notice subtle shifts in the ambience of Ocean Crest. It wasn't just the change in decor or the refreshing updates to the facilities, it was a palpable energy that infused every corner of the building. The public spaces, once sterile and meticulously controlled by corporate facades, now reverberated with genuine human warmth and authenticity. Guests started engaging in conversations with staff members who now carried a spark of pride in their work, and many found themselves sharing stories of small kindnesses that had gone unnoticed before. The hotel's atmosphere began to subtly mirror the broader community's yearning for honest connection and fairness. Every interaction, every friendly nod told a story of transformation that transcended the sum of its parts. In waiting areas and lobby cafes, strangers exchanged thoughtful glances and whispers of admiration for the woman who had dared to expose the truth. The experience was nothing short of cathartic. A reminder that even in places steeped in tradition and privilege, genuine change could bridge divides and create bonds. Elena's personal crusade had redefined the guest experience into something far more profound than a routine stay at a luxury hotel. It had become a transformative journey where every moment was imbued with the powerful reminder that true luxury lay in being seen, respected, and valued as a person rather than as a mere statistic in a corporate ledger. The renewed connection between the staff and the guests fostered an environment where authentic interactions bloomed, a living testament to the idea that justice and dignity could indeed be found in the most unlikely of places. As Bryce's saga came to a bitter, public end, the man who had once wielded power with unrestrained arrogance was now left to confront the far-reaching consequences of his misdeeds. Isolated and embittered, he retreated into the dark recesses of his former domain, his every move shadowed by the echoes of public scorn and digital mockery. News outlets pounced on the unfolding scandal, dissecting every detail of his fall from grace with a clinical precision that left little room for redemption. Articles chronicled his once dazzling rise and his subsequent descent into obscurity, painting a picture of a man undone by his own hubris. In hushed tones over cocktail tables in upscale bars and in heated discussions on social media threads, people recounted Bryce's exploits, each narrative more damning than the last. He was no longer seen as the capable leader he had claimed to be. His actions, exposed under the harsh light of day, redefined him as a figure of ridicule and disdain. For every statement he made in his desperate attempts at a comeback, there were 100 more that highlighted his misguided arrogance. The board had not only rejected him, they had set an irreversible precedent that no one, regardless of their position, was above accountability. Bryce's legal maneuvers, intended to salvage a semblance of power, floundered against the overwhelming tide of evidence and public opinion. In the silence that followed his final dismissal, the echoes of his past transgressions rang louder than any statement he could muster. The outcome was a stark reminder that, in an era driven by transparency and social equity, every act of cruelty would eventually be met with its due retribution. His once lavish lifestyle and inflated reputation were now reduced to cautionary tales, a stark warning that the pursuit of unchecked power invariably leads to one's own undoing. In the wake of Bryce's dramatic exit, Ocean Crest Hotel embarked on a transformation that breathed new life into its aging corridors and altered its very identity. Elena, now the undisputed owner, stood at the helm of a reinvention that was as much about healing old wounds as it was about forging a future founded on transparency and respect. The once oppressive atmosphere was slowly replaced with an energy that prioritized the voices and well-being of every employee. From revamping the outdated policies that had long oppressed the staff to implementing innovative programs that celebrated teamwork and inclusion, the hotel underwent a metamorphosis that resonated with both local residents and international guests. Elena's strategy was clear. She was not there to merely change the physical space, but to transform the very ethos of an institution that had once thrived on exploitation. Her vision was interwoven with stories of genuine care, shifts that now ended with smiles instead of exhaustion, corridors where every face was acknowledged and every effort celebrated. In town hall meetings held in renovated spaces that once echoed with the rigid formality of corporate decrees, voices were heard and decisions were made collaboratively. Elena introduced measures that not only rewarded excellence in service but also recognized the personal struggles and triumphs of those who had long been relegated to the background. The changes were revolutionary, stirring up emotions and generating a newfound pride among the workforce. More than just a tangible transformation, it was a spirit of rebirth, a public statement that everyone's dignity mattered. Elena's leadership was not defined by strict hierarchies or cold metrics, but by empathy and the willingness to confront long-standing inequities. The hotel's transformation quickly became a symbol of hope and resilience, capturing the attention of a wider audience and igniting discussions on social justice that reverberated far beyond its freshly painted walls. As Ocean Crest Hotel emerged from its long period of decay, its transformation became emblematic of a broader struggle for recognition and respect, a struggle that resonated with countless individuals who had long felt marginalized and voiceless. The hospital walls, once impermeable to the inner lives of its workers, now bore murals celebrating diversity and shared triumph. Elena initiated community outreach programs, holding events that bridged the gap between the hotel's internal culture and the surrounding vibrant neighborhoods of Miami. These programs were designed not only to empower the staff but also to forge lasting bonds with the community, instilling a renewed sense of pride and ownership in the hotel's future. In elegant celebrations that mixed salsa rhythms with impassioned speeches, stories were shared of personal hardships and hard-won victories. Long-simmering tensions found their outlets in art, music, and communal dialogue, each contributing to an atmosphere rich with hope and determination. Elena's personal journey, the transition from a silent observer to a formidable force for change, became a rallying cry for the underdog, sparking debates and inspiring countless others to stand up against systemic injustice. The very foundations of the hotel were rebuilt not just with concrete and paint, but with empathy, collaboration, and the enduring belief that every story, every life mattered immensely. In reimagining the hotel as a space where differences were celebrated rather than hidden, Elena shattered the conventional confines of corporate hierarchy. Her endeavors ignited broader conversations on fairness and inclusion that extended well beyond the hotel's luxury lobby, touching every corner of the city and inspiring a movement where every individual dared to dream of a future free from oppression. Over time, the rejuvenated Ocean Crest Hotel began to serve as more than just a place of luxury and lodging. It became a living testament to the transformative power of empathy, accountability, and individual courage. The fresh faces of the new management were not strangers to hardship, and they carried with them the spirit of change that Elena had so boldly kindled. As policies were reformed and employee voices were elevated to strategic decision-making roles, stories of personal transformation and professional growth began to flow freely from every department. It wasn't uncommon to find longtime staff sharing heartfelt moments of triumph and gratitude during impromptu meetings in the newly revamped staff lounge, their voices resonating with the weight of years of suppressed potential finally being recognized. Elena, who had once been confined to the shadows of the hotel's back corridors, now found herself at the epicenter of a dynamic, ever-evolving narrative of recovery and rebirth. Her leadership was characterized not by grand proclamations but by genuine, measured actions that uplifted those around her. The hotel, with every polished surface and thoughtfully redesigned space, told a story of reconciliation, a bridge between a troubled past and a hopeful future. It became a sanctuary for both its employees and guests, a place where every individual could feel seen, valued, and inspired to contribute to a larger collective. The transformation was not without its challenges, but each obstacle served to reinforce the underlying commitment to turn adversity into opportunity. Over time, the hotel's new ethos redefined how success was measured, not by profit margins alone, but by the shared prosperity of a community brought together by the simple yet powerful belief that every person's dignity was invaluable. Amid the sweeping changes at Ocean Crest Hotel, as policies shifted and staff morale soared, Elena found herself reflecting deeply on the timeless truth that true power is never about the outward trappings of wealth or authority. It lies in the strength of one's character and the ability to uplift others. Late one evening, as she wandered the newly revitalized hallways, bathed in the soft glow of modern fixtures and punctuated by the hum of genuine conversation, Elena recalled the countless nights spent mopping floors in silence, unnoticed by those who prided themselves on their appearances and empty promises. Each echo of her past struggles now blended with the vibrant heartbeat of the hotel's rebirth, forming a symphony of redemption and renewal. It was in those quiet moments that she realized the real victory had never been about the legal documents, the hard evidence, or even the public spectacle. It was about reclaiming the very essence of her dignity and proving that every human being deserved respect, regardless of their station. The lessons learned in the dim light of overlooked nights became the guiding principles of a leadership that valued empathy over greed, collaboration over isolation. The hotel's transformation mirrored the deeper transformation occurring within its inhabitants, a slow, steadfast process where every smile shared, every struggle acknowledged, and every small act of kindness contributed to a larger mosaic of societal change. In the transformation of this grand establishment, Elena saw the reflection of her own journey, a testament to the belief that even the quietest among us can shine the brightest when given the chance to be seen for who we truly are. On the eve of a celebratory evening marking the hotel's complete reinvention, Elena gathered with her closest allies and long-overlooked colleagues for one final moment of reflection before the official opening of the new Ocean Crest. Under a sky streaked with the pinks and oranges of a Miami sunset, she shared with her gathered community the story of her journey. From the humblest beginnings behind a mop to the ultimate reclamation of a legacy that had been unjustly withheld. Emotions ran high as voices, once stifled by fear and resentment, now rose together in a chorus of hope and determination. The shared narratives of personal struggle and eventual triumph filled the air with an almost palpable energy, as if every heart present was collectively rewriting the rules of respect and dignity. In that charged moment, Elena was reminded that every act of defiance, every quiet night of unseen labor, was a step toward this luminous future. The stories from the past of betrayal, heartbreak, and sheer, unyielding perseverance were not merely chapters of her life but blueprints for transformation that would inspire generations to come. As laughter intermingled with tears of relief and triumph, Elena knew that the legacy she inherited was no longer a burden but a beacon, a guiding light that affirmed every individual's right to be recognized, cherished, and free to pursue their dreams without the weight of imposed invisibility. It was a triumph not just for her but for every voice that had ever been silenced by injustice, a resonant reminder that beneath every ordinary exterior lies the extraordinary potential to redefine the world. Now, as the transformed Ocean Crest Hotel basks in its newfound glory and promises of a fairer, brighter future, the story of Elena Ramirez has transcended its origins to become a viral phenomenon, one that echoes far beyond the borders of Miami. Her journey from an overlooked janitor to the formidable owner who reclaimed her birthright is a stirring testament to the power of resilience, justice, and unwavering courage. The legacy of her grandfather, once hidden in faded documents, now lives in every polished corridor, every genuine smile shared between staff and guests alike. This is a story that challenges us all to see beyond appearances and to recognize that every person, regardless of how quietly they live their life, holds within them the potential to transform the world. If you've been moved by Elena's incredible tale of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately triumphant revenge, then show your support by hitting that like button, subscribing to our channel, and sharing this story with your friends. We want to hear your thoughts. Comment below with your perspectives or key lessons you've taken away from this journey of justice and resilience. Let this be a reminder that sometimes the most unassuming figures can ignite the most powerful revolutions, proving that no one is ever truly invisible when the truth finally comes to light. Enjoy, reflect, and let your voice be heard as we continue to celebrate the triumph of those who dare to break the silence and transform injustice into a legacy of hope.